Working with multiple components in React. In Visual Studio Code, I've created a new React project called Example. I've also changed directory down here into the example directory I created. So notice over here, example, and I highlighted the source directory, src. When we're working with multiple components, the first thing we always want to do is create the components folder if it does not already exist. The components folder will go in the source folder. Again, remembering that source, src, is the source folder. So with src highlighted right here, I'm going to go up in Visual Studio Code, click on New Folder, and call this Components. Then for each new component I'm adding to this project, it will have its own folder, named after the component it exports. So for example, I have a components folder. I want to add a new component called Another Example with a capital A and capital E. With the components folder highlighted, I want to go up and click on New Folder, and this time, Another Example. Notice capital A, capital E, and then press Enter. So I have components and then Another Example. Now I'm going to click on Components and make sure it's highlighted. Notice how it's now underlined. And come up here and click on Another Folder. New Folder. I'm going to call this Second Example. Notice capital S, capital E. So I have components and then two folders, one for each of the components I'm going to use in this project. The first one is Another Component, capital A, capital E, and the other is Second Example, capital S, capital E. Now in each of these, I'm going to create a new file. Each of these new files will be an index.js file. So with Another Example highlighted right here, go to New File and create index.js. With Second Example, click on this, make sure it's highlighted. Then I'm going to create a new file right here, new file, and call this index.js. In both cases now, I have two different components, each of which has their own folder named after what the component is. I now need to create the code for these components in each folder. In another example right here, I want this to be a class component. So the first thing I'm always going to do is import React, capital R, from React lowercase r right here, first line. Then this is a class component, so I want to use the class keyword. Another example, named after the component folder it's in. The name of the object or class now matches the name of the folder. This is going to extends React component, open and closing curly brackets. Now, before I do anything else, let's make sure I am exporting out this class so I can use it in another file. So export, and this will be the only thing I export from this file. So I can go export default. Default meaning this is the only thing, the single thing being exported from this. And what am I exporting? Another example. So now I have a class in this file named after the folder. The capitalization matches. I have another example, capital A, capital E in the folder name. And what this file, the index.js exports, is another example of the class, capital A, capital E. So this is a class component. All class components in React have to have at least one method, and that method is called render. So I'm going to go ahead and create render as a method right here. All render methods must return something. So the thing it needs to return is some type of JSX, JavaScript XML. So right now, I'm going to put open and closing parentheses and just a semicolon. Now I'm going to pause here and save this file. So I'm on Windows, so Control S. If I was in Mac, I could do Command S to save. I'm going to move over to second example right here. I'm going to create a function component or a functional component right here in second example. So let's go ahead and import React, even though I'm not going to use it, just in case we want to use it in the future. Right here, import React. Now, function components don't extend anything because they're not classes. So I'm going to create a function called second example. And just like I did for another example, I want to make sure I'm exporting something out of this. So the thing I'm going to export should match the name of the folder or file it's in. So for this function, which of course is an object in JavaScript, I want to export. And if I'm only going to export one thing, I want export default. For default, I'm going to export one thing. What am I going to export? Second example. Right here. Okay. So this is a function component, which means when it is converted from elements and attributes to objects and properties, this function will be passed an argument. We want to call it here as a parameter props. Or we can just get used to using this.props in classes and props and function component. Either way, we're using props as an abbreviation for properties. Again, remembering elements and attributes to objects and properties. So this is the properties. This is a function. So similar to how the render method in the class component must return some type of JSX, this is a function component, and so it also must return something. So it's got to return something. And what it's going to return right here is just a simple paragraph tag. But what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to use second example as an element form in another example. I'm going to pass it an attribute called first name. So I know I'm going to do this, even though I haven't done it yet. And this will be called props first name, although this doesn't exist quite yet. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file, and let's talk about this. So when second example is converted between an element and attributes to objects and properties, its props, the thing it's passed into this function component, will have a property called first name. So over here in another example, I want to now import in second example. So now I need to remember to start this, right? Import, what are we doing? Second example. I spell it correctly. Example from. Now we need to think about relative locations of components in reference to each other. So normally, if we were importing in the app.js file, we would go / for same directory, components, and then / whatever that components folder was or whatever file we wanted to import. We can't quite do that because the / means same directory. This is an index.js file that's inside a folder called another example. If I used /, it would mean the same directory. There isn't a folder called components inside another example. Another example is inside the components folder, so the relationship is the other way around. In which case then, we need to think about it. Instead of using / for current directory or same directory, we want .. And notice as soon as I did that, Visual Studio Code went, oh, do you mean second example or another example? Because from its point of view of this file, we want .. from index .. is now up here. It says, oh, these are the only two possibilities. So it lists them both for us, and it gives us a little icon telling us this folder. Now, if we went .. it would move us all the way up another directory. And so we moved from inside of another example up to components. And notice here that's listed. And it says, okay, well, from this point of view, from the src source point of view, all the possibilities are either app, app test, index, and of course, everything else. But that's not quite what we want. We want .. so move up from another example into components. And then from here, we want second example. And I can press enter here and then put a semicolon at the end. Now remember, in React, we can just point to a folder if the folder has an index.js file. React is smart enough to know, oh, I'm going to go ahead and import everything that's in this folder, and we'll know by default to use the index.js file. So right here then, we know that we have second example, and again, pointing over here to this folder, second example. Now, I'm not currently returning anything, and the little red squiggly says, hey, you're not doing anything with this. So I need to go ahead and return something. What I'm going to return is second example, And again, I need to keep in mind that I can convert between elements and attributes to objects and properties. So I'm going to send first name equal to Dan. And I need to close this element. The 3 rules of JSX: 1 root element, all elements must close, only JavaScript expressions are allowed. So we are maintaining 2 of the 3 rules right here. I have 1 root element. There's only 1 element. It is the root. And of course, it is self-closing, so that rule of closing still applies. So I can go ahead and save this. So over here, and as a review, I'm importing in second example from another example. So // meaning move up a directory, and then importing in second example from there, remembering that we can import a folder when that folder contains an index.js file, because React is smart enough to import everything from there. Finally, I want to actually test all of this. So I need to run npm space run space start. And this will start us off. So I'm going to go ahead and close this so we can see it in action. npm run start and press enter. Then it's going to start up React script start, and it's going to process everything and then start up a development server in my default web browser, which for me is Google Chrome. And we will see it open here momentarily. And we see right here, oh no, we're looking at app. So what happened? Well, let's go back and look at this. I fixed another example, and it's using second example, which is over here. But over here, this is all the default same text. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all of this right here. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of everything. Then I'm going to create app as a function component. So let's go ahead and import React just in case we need it in the future. We don't need it for a function component, but we might want to use something in the future. Let's go ahead and import React. And then create a function called app. Again, we'll give it props just in case we want to use it in the future. Now, this is a function component, so it's got to return something. The thing it's going to return will be within the open and close parentheses. Now up here, let's go ahead and import another example. And where are we importing it from? Well, I want // meaning same directory. So from app.js point of view, / the same directory, we could go / components. Because look, components is in the same directory as app.js. They're on the same level here. So / components. And then what do we want? / another example. Again, remembering we can import a folder if that folder contains an index.js file. So down here, now this case, I want another example, and it will be self-closing. Still maintaining the 3 rules of JSX. 1 root element, all elements must close, only JavaScript expressions are allowed. We currently have 1 element, so it is the root element. It's self-closing. Notice the / at the end inside the starting tag. And we don't have any JavaScript expressions, so that rule doesn't really apply. And let's save. So let's move back over here to Chrome. And now we see Dan. So what's happening, right? I said use another example. It came over here and said, okay, another example. Another example is a class component with a render function. Again, all class components must have a render function. What this is returning is second example. So it's saying, okay, I'm going to convert between elements and attributes. Second example, I'm going to pass whatever its attributes are as an argument to whatever second example is. So it becomes props. And over here we have props.firstname. Intermixing class components and function components, and paying attention to how we're importing different files. If we're importing a file in the same directory, /, we're importing a file or folder that's a directory above, // meaning move back or move up a directory. And we can continue to use / or // to navigate between directories in relative distance to each other. So again, another example is // from this index.js file right here. And second example right here is in its own folder. And from app's point of view, / because components and app.js are in the same directory, / components / another example. And in each case here, we are converting between elements and attributes. So this is the element form of another example, which again is converting from this class, again, a future object, which is converting between this function, which of course is also an object. So in each case, it's converting between elements and attributes to objects and properties, elements and attributes to objects and properties, elements and attributes to objects and properties, until finally it gets down here and has the paragraph tag. And so we see then it's converting until we get to this right here. And we can verify. So in Google Chrome, go to this, more tools, developer tools, and we'll come over here to elements and look at the one div root. And we see paragraph tag Dan. So it converted, and finally it hit something that wasn't an object, so not a function or not a class. It was actually this paragraph tag. It was returned. And so this was returned and returned and returned. And then finally we see the result right here. So this has been a review of working with multiple components, remembering to create that components folder, and then for each new component to create a new folder named after the object or class in which that folder is exporting. In each case, creating an index.js file within that folder, putting that object or class, in the case of either a function or class component, in those, and then remembering them in relation to each other. So either / meaning same directory or current directory, or / meaning move up a directory or go to the parent directory of the current one. And again, these are relative paths to each other. And once we have this all figured out, we can use multiple components together. In this case, the app component, another example component, and second example component moved all together and one after another, in each case converting between elements and attributes to objects and properties, elements and attributes to objects and properties, elements and attributes to objects and properties finally.